The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Roman Miller. I'm one of the meteorologists here at the National Weather Service in Wakefield, Virginia. Today is your Thursday, June 18th briefing, looking at the weather forecast over the next few days into the next week, really. So the main changes, that's going to be that we have issued now a heat advisory for southeastern portions of the area today. And then storm chances are a little bit more uncertain today than they looked yesterday, and we might get convection a touch earlier than initially expected. So before I proceed any further, let me go ahead and show you. This is just our composite reflectivity, or what the radar looks like over the area this morning. It's a loop of what has occurred over the past couple of hours here. And you can see that we did have an MCS. It did persist as it moved through the Ohio Valley into West Virginia, and it's trying to make it east of the mountains, but as it pushes further east of the mountains and towards Virginia, and especially central Virginia, it looks like it's starting to fall apart now as it's running into a little bit of a stable air mass in place. However, now that this has moved in quicker than models had yesterday, that's probably going to set up some sort of an outflow boundary across the southern tier of our forecast area, which other storms could form on later this afternoon, and that would be your best chance for severe potential. And looking at the sky cover out there right now, we do have, again, those increased clouds with that MCS. And you can see east of the MCS, we do have a lot more broken or scattered cloud cover out there, which is really going to help those temperatures rise up into the mid to upper 90s, especially across southeastern portions of the area where we have that heat advisory in effect later today. So once again, I'll go into this a little bit more in detail shortly, but we are under a slight risk, or a level 2 for severe weather today across most of the area, but it does look like that threat is probably shifting towards the southern tier of our counties, mainly south of 360. And it's going to be mainly for strong wind gusts as the primary threat. And then we do have an increased fire danger statement today for our northeastern North Carolina counties. So just a quick overview of the frontal systems over the next few days. We do have a low pressure system moving into Canada today, and that has a trailing cold front that's going to be approaching the area later today, but likely not moving through the area until tomorrow. So you can see here on Friday, we have that cold front slowly moving down to the south throughout the afternoon hours probably. And then it does get south of the area by late in the day Friday, which should help us to have some nice weather for this weekend as high pressure builds in with drying conditions and pretty pleasant weather overall expected. And then by Monday, we could see an additional showers and storm chances increasing as another low pressure system moves towards the area. So for today's severe storm potential, this is from the Storm Prediction Center, where most of the region is under a slight risk. But again, based on what we're seeing, that greatest threat does appear to now be probably along and south of US 360. A lot more uncertain for the northern tier of the counties, given some low-level stability that we're expecting behind this MCS that's moving through. And I can actually show that here with our mesoanalysis page. So basically, all of these blue shadings, and the darker the blue, the more stable the air mass. And you can see we still have some stability across the entire region, which is why that storm, the line of storms, is really falling apart as it moves east. But then if we go ahead a few hours, you can see that that blue shaded area does linger across northern portions of the area into the afternoon. This is looking at 3 p.m. So with that, the storm threat could be a lot more limited further north. And wherever you get south of that blue shaded area, in this case, probably far southern Virginia into northeastern North Carolina, that's where you're able to tap into that fuel for the storms, that instability, and you have a better chance for getting some severe wind gusts later today. So just wanted to share that with everyone. And again, storms should be moving from west to east around 35 to 45 miles an hour, with winds the main threat, 55 to 70. 70 might be a bit high, but the past few severe events, we have had some pretty strong wind gusts out there, so certainly can't rule that out. And we're not expecting much in terms of hail today, but we can't completely rule out an isolated quarter-sized hail stone. But again, that's not the main threat today. Similarly with the tornado threat, which I'll show here, there's technically a small chance for an isolated tornado across the Piedmont counties. But again, confidence is quite low with that, with our LCLs, or basically our cloud heights, pretty far off the ground for what we like to see for tornadoes around here. So one of those things where we can't rule it out, but it's not a very high chance at all. And then I do want to mention tomorrow's threat as well, because we are under a marginal or level 1 threat for some severe storms across just our northeastern North Carolina counties for now. And that's going to be for brief, strong to damaging wind gust and or an isolated tornado. So we have some convection moving through, and tomorrow will be a different timing. So it looks earlier in the day, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., with storms moving from southwest to northeast. And that's going to be in association with the remnants of a tropical system as it moves down to the south of our area. So looking at what we can expect for the rest of the day, this is what we had on our briefing we sent this morning, but I can go into a little bit more detail here with DESI. And I'll show just, again, this is just one model, but it gives you a general idea. Here is noon. We have some showers, maybe an isolated storm moving it through the area, approaching potentially Richmond to Farmville. And then that does look like it continues to fall apart early this afternoon, and that's going to be from that initial line of convection that I showed earlier on the radar. And again, that convection probably is going to continue to taper off over the next couple of hours, with our main threat potentially developing later this afternoon with additional storms moving and interacting with whatever outflow boundary that first line ends up spitting out. So if we do have storms that can interact with that outflow boundary, and if that outflow boundary sets up somewhere across, let's say, southern Virginia or northeastern North Carolina, then that's probably going to be your corridor of greatest severe potential later this afternoon. And this particular model has storms moving in around 4 to 5 p.m. in the Piedmont, and then by 95 around 5, 6 p.m., and then kind of becoming a little bit more scattered in nature as the convection moves on to the east and southeast by later this evening. This particular image is for 8 p.m. this evening. And then convection could continue into the night, but at that point, it's probably non-severe, just showers and storms. And then we will have to watch to see what happens with Friday as well. So for today, we're not expecting a ton in terms of rainfall, nothing that's really helping out our drought situation, but in general, around 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch of rain is expected, with locally higher totals upwards of 1/2 inch possible. And again, with the timing of the convection, it does look like the best chances are going to be later this afternoon into the overnight hours for that convection, the showers and storms. And then for tomorrow, that's when our best threat for flash flooding is going to be. Again, it's not a very high threat. It's quite low right now. But if there was going to be any flash flooding, it's more likely to occur tomorrow than today. And that's going to be from that tropical moisture that's moving into the area. And I have here circled in red, this is going to be your best chance for localized rainfall totals of 2 or more inches, and as well as your best chance for localized flooding, probably in urban areas, given that we haven't had a lot of rain recently, so our flash flood guidance is quite high. But do want to mention that potential as well, because you could get some pretty heavy rainfall rates overnight tonight into the day tomorrow, especially across southeastern Virginia and northeastern North Carolina. And then over on the right, I'm not going to read out everywhere, but we do have listed several different locations with your chance of rain, and that's going to be pop. And then your chance of thunder underneath in the oranges to reds, and that's going to be your pot. And you can kind of see the general idea that convection should be ongoing through the overnight hours into the first part of the day on Friday, with potentially things clearing out later in the afternoon on Friday as the cold front moves through. So again, over the next couple of days, we are under some excessive rainfall outlooks from the Weather Prediction Center. Today's threat looks much more uncertain than tomorrow. I would say today is a very low threat and tomorrow is a low threat. So again, that highest chance tomorrow is going to be across southeastern Virginia and northeastern North Carolina with the heavy rainfall rates from the tropical remnants. And again, we can't rule out anything today, but again, tomorrow looks like right now the better chance. And then looking ahead at the precipitation chances through Saturday night on the left and from Saturday night through Wednesday on the right. And you can see that the best chance, again, is going to be southeastern Virginia, northeastern North Carolina, with maybe upwards of an inch of rain possible, and then lower chances by next week. Now, looking at our increased fire danger statement today, that's just going to be for our northeastern North Carolina counties that we have highlighted here. And that's going to be in effect from 10 a.m. through 8 p.m. today. Due to relative humidities of 30 to 40% with west-southwest or southwest winds gusting upwards of 30 miles an hour. And then for our heat advisory, and that's going to be for a little bit larger area of southeastern Virginia into northeastern North Carolina for today, with heat indices around 105 degrees possible, or what it's going to feel like across, again, that region of southeastern Virginia and northeastern North Carolina. So we do want everyone to be aware of that potential as well for some, it's going to be quite hot out there today. And then looking at our heat risk over the next 5 days, you can see today is the peak of the heat right now. And then things do improve quite a bit by Friday with all that convection we have. It should keep our temperatures a little bit cooler. And then this weekend, nothing really of note there, as we do have high pressure moving in, which will help our temperatures to be a little bit cooler than they are now. So looking at today's high temperatures and our heat indices, again, it's going to be a hot one out there with temperatures, widespread actual temperatures in the mid to upper 90s, and then what it's going to feel like, or heat indices of around 100 to 104 for most areas, a little bit higher across the southeastern portion of area, where again, you could see that 105 reading for what the heat indices are going to be like. And then here's just looking ahead for the temperature forecast for the rest of the day. You can see where temperatures peak in the typical early to late afternoon period. And that's going to be when your highest heat indices are expected as well. And that's going to be the table on the right. And regarding winds today, we are expecting some pretty gusty winds throughout the day across the area, with southwesterly winds gusting to 30 to 35 miles an hour across the region. So just be prepared for that. It's going to be hot and breezy today, essentially. And then looking a little bit further ahead in time, again, you can see on the far right with your chance of precipitation that once we get through Friday, conditions do look quite a bit better for this weekend. And then as that next area of low pressure approaches the region by Monday, Tuesday, we do have additional chances for some rain. Then regarding the rip current risk, today we have a moderate risk across our northern beaches with a low rip risk across our southern beaches. And that's going to maintain about the same for tomorrow. But we will have to take another look depending on how this area of low pressure tracks for tonight into tomorrow if we want to consider upgrading. But for now, it's low for tomorrow across the south. And then looking ahead to the next week and beyond, so this is June 23rd to June 27th, very rough idea, but in general, we're looking at around normal, maybe a touch below normal temperatures, but generally around normal, and then near normal precipitation that's favored across the region. And we do have our new drought outlook. So not a whole lot of change across the area. In general, a little bit worse, as you'd expect, with not really receiving much rain over the past week. So again, we have a lot of our area under a D2 to a D3 drought. So a severe to an extreme drought across the region continues, with a few locations a little bit better where they got heavier rainfall a few weeks ago. But in general, the drought is certainly still there, and it continues to worsen with not a lot of relief in sight, except for maybe across the southeastern portion of our area, depending on how much rain they get over the next couple of days. And then I did mention the tropical system. So basically, we had Tropical Storm Arthur in the Gulf this morning, or yesterday really, and then the remnant, it's only turned into remnants now, so it's no longer a tropical storm. But the remnants of Arthur are going to continue to move northeastward over the next day or so, And then as the remnants interact with a cold front in a trough across the region, it could re-intensify. However, at that point, it's no longer purely tropical because it's interacting with that front. So the remnants of that system is bringing us the rain tonight into tomorrow, and it's going to have tropical characteristics to the rainfall rates. So you'll get some very heavy rainfall rates and very efficient rain. But right now, it's not expected to be considered fully tropical, which is why it's just a 10% chance. But I did want to mention that is a new thing that the Hurricane Center put out earlier this morning. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of that. So again, they only have a 10% chance, mainly because they don't expect it to be considered tropical at that point. But we will have a low pressure moving across that region. And let me bring up our marine briefing. So as that low moves offshore over the next 24 hours, we do expect winds to increase, especially for our offshore waters. And with that, mainly our offshore North Carolina waters, we do have a gale warning just for that one zone for southwestern winds gusting up to 40 knots and seas of 6 to 9 feet, occasionally to 12. And that's going to be from late this afternoon into tonight where we see those increasing winds. Everywhere else, winds look to be below gale condition for now. We already mentioned that slide, so I'll go ahead to our marine threat for the next 5 days. You can see that today on the left, we're under elevated, which makes sense given we have some small crafts in effect. And then conditions do improve for Saturday before the increasing winds with the next system Sunday into especially maybe Monday, mainly Monday, apologies. It does have a little bit elevated Sunday, but it's really probably going to be for Sunday, late Sunday night into Monday, where we get those elevated winds ahead of the next system. So looking ahead over the next 72 hours, we do expect our southwest winds of 15 to 25 knots with gusts up to 30 knots today. And I do want to mention the chance for a brief surge tomorrow behind the cold front. And you can kind of see it in this hourly graph here. So we have our increased winds today, and then you have a bit of a lull tomorrow during the morning and early afternoon hours where winds do die down below small craft conditions likely. And then during the afternoon, we do have that cold front moving down, and behind that cold front, we do expect a quick increase in winds to around 20, 25 knots perhaps, and that as winds shift to the north, so they'll be out of the north. And again, that looks like it's around the early to mid-afternoon period. And then winds do taper off behind that front as high pressure builds in for the weekend. Similar situation offshore, except for you can see that North Carolina offshore waters are a little bit higher, where we have better chance for above 35 knots of wind as far as the gusts go. So that's why we have that gale warning out there for that zone. But in general, again, we do have the elevated winds today into early tomorrow, a bit of a lull in the late morning, early afternoon, and then winds do ramp up again behind that cold front very briefly, where you could get some gusts around 25 knots or so, and then tapering off by the weekend. And looking ahead beyond there, I did mention that by Sunday night into Monday, we do see that next round of elevated winds. And so you can see that here. We're looking by 6 a.m. Monday to noon, about southwest winds around 15 to 20 knots, with gusts up to 25, maybe a bit higher in a few spots. So that is the next period of elevated winds after today's situation. And then winds do look like they taper off by like Tuesday afternoon into the middle of next week. As far as seas go, waves and seas. Right now, we're expecting mainly 2 to 3 foot waves in the Chesapeake Bay, and then for the coastal waters, mainly looking at 3 to 5 foot seas. And here's a little better view of the seas. So a little bit higher over the next 84 hours. But again, it's generally going to be the further offshore you go, the higher the seas are going to build, given that tropical remnant low moving offshore. So this is today's wave heights, and there's tomorrow, and then there is on Saturday. So you can see conditions improving quite a bit by Saturday. And we already mentioned that. But let me see, I think there was one other thing I was going to show. And that's going to be, here's our winds. I know this is kind of a messy map right now, but in general, all the area highlighted about the same color shading of about 25 to 35-mile-an-hour winds today out of the southwest. And I'm just going to go ahead into tomorrow so I can kind of show that winds do remain a bit elevated across, let me go, here's 8 a.m. across southeastern portions of the area. This is about 20 miles an hour or so. And then you can see that winds do taper off in that late morning, early afternoon period before here comes the cold front. This is noon. And then I'll go ahead to 3 to 4 p.m. You can see this surge moving down the James River and lower bay with gusts up to 20, 25 miles an hour possible with that surge behind the cold front. So just want everyone to be aware of timing for the James River. Looks like mainly around 3 to 5 p.m. As well as the lower bay. And maybe winds are not quite as strong ahead of that further up the bay and rivers, but down there, that's about your timing you're looking at. And then further south, a little bit later, as you'd expect, around like 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And by 7 p.m. here, winds are starting to diminish across the area. But that is all that I have, and I am happy to take any questions now.